There is something happening right now that most people will never notice. Amin interrupts you mid-sentence and watches your face. Amion laughs at your idea and studies your reaction. Somion ignores your message for hours and waits to see if you chase them. Somion stares at you in silence after you finish talking and counts the seconds until you break. And the terrifying thing is none of this is random. None of this is accidental. Every single one of these moments is a test, a quiet, invisible psychological test that people run on you every single day. And you have been taking these tests your entire life without even knowing they existed. At work, at schooling, friendships and relationships, even with strangers you will never see again. And the dunya results of these tests decide something enormous. Decide how people treat you, how much respect they give you, how much power they allow you to have in their presence. Here is where it gets dark. Most people fail these tests not because they are weak, not because they are stupid, not because they lack talent or value, but because nobody ever told them the tests were happening. They react emotionally, they shrink, they over-explain, they chase approval, they fill silences with nervous words, and in doing so they send a signal, a clear invisible signal that says, I do not fully believe in myself. And once people receive that signal, everything changes. Way they speak to you changes, way they treat you changes, amount of respect they give you changes. And most people spend their entire lives confused, wondering why certain people seem to command respect effortlessly, wondering why some people walk into rooms and something shifts, wondering why confidence seems like a secret language they were never taught. Today, that changed. Today, you are going to learn the hidden ways people secretly test your confidence every single day. And once you see these patterns, since you truly understand what is happening beneath the surface of ordinary human interactions, you will never look at social dynamics the same way again. This is human hour, and what you are about to discover will change the way you move through the world forever. Pay very close attention the next time you are in a conversation with more than one person. Watch what happens when someone starts speaking back within seconds, sometimes within the very first sentence. Another person will cut them off, and most people assume this is just rudeness. Most people assume this is just a bad habit or a personality flaw, but there is something deeper happening, something much more psychologically significant. Intrient is one of the oldest and most powerful confidence tests in human social behavior. When someone interrupts you, they are creating a moment of pressure, a split second where your emotional reaction reveals something true about you, something you could never fake with words or rehearsed confidence. And in that split second, most people respond in one of three ways. First response is instant silence. They immediately stop talking. They pull back. They shrinking. That shrinking communicates something devastating to everyone watching. Second response is nervous laughter, a little anxious sound that fills the awkward space, and that laughter communicates the same thing in a different package. The third response is rushing, speaking faster, trying desperately to finish the sentence before getting cut off again, and that rushing communicates panic. All three responses send the exact same message to the people around you. Words are not important enough to protect. I do not believe I deserve this space. And once people unconsciously receive that message, they believe it too. No, watch what happens when someone with genuine inner confidence gets interrupted. They do not go silent. They do not laugh nervously. They do not speed up their words. They pause. They bread hand. Then they continue at the exact same pace with the exact same energies. If the interruption simply did not have the power to stop them, and that calm continuation changes the entire social atmosphere. Base what it communicates is not Aggression is not arrogancy, it is something far more powerful. It communicates certainty. It communicates the unspoken belief that what I'm saying deserves to be heard, and the human brain responds to that signal immediately in people. Listen, people adjust their behavior best. Confidence is contagious in the most mysterious way. Interruption test happens in business meetings where careers are quietly decided. It happens in friend groups where social hierarchies are silently established. It happens in romantic relationships where attraction is constantly being recalibrated. It happens in families where dynamics get locked in sometimes for decades. And here is the most haunting part: many people who interrupt you are not even aware they are doing it. Social scanning is unconscious. It is evolutionary. Human beings have been evaluating each other for emotional strength since long before language existed, and interruption remains one of the fastest, most reliable ways to detect it. So, the next time someone cuts you off mid-sentence, not panicked, not rushed, not shrink-breathed, continue, because that single calm continuation might be the most powerful thing you do in that entire conversation. There is something peculiar that happens when people first meet. They make jokes, small jokes, light jokes that seem harmless on the surface, but underneath those jokes, something fascinating is happening. They are probing, they are testing your emotional reactions with humor as the disguise, and humor is the perfect disguise because it creates what psychologists call plausible deniability. A direct insult creates conflict, a direct challenge creates confrontation, but a joke creates a situation where your reaction is fully exposed while theirs remains protected. If you react emotionally, they can say, "Relax, I was just joking." If you become defensive, they can say, "It was just a bit of fun," but your reaction has already given them everything they were looking for. They have already learned something true about you. Something you did not choose to reveal. No, observe what different reactions actually communicate. You become defensive immediately, sense insecurity beneath the surface. Your ego has a wound, and jokes can find it. If you overreact with sudden anger, people sense emotional instability, a kind of unpredictability that makes them cautious around you. But if you stay relaxed, if you smile naturally, if you respond without any trace of emotional panic, people sense something rare. They sense inner security. They sense a person who knows who they are, a person whose identity does not depend on the opinions of others, and that quality is magnetic in a way most people cannot fully explain. They just feel it. No, there is something crucial to understand. This is not about accepting all treatment equally. This is not about letting people disrespect you while you smile through it. There is a very important difference between playful teasing and the kind of humor people use to establish dominance. Emotionally intelligent people can sense that difference. They can feel when a joke is genuine lightness, and they can feel when a joke is designed to diminish them. And sometimes the most powerful response is not a clever comeback. Sometimes the most powerful response is calm indifference. This nothing confuses a person who is testing your emotional reactions more than the discovery that they cannot find the reaction they were looking for. When you stop being emotionally reactive and you stop needing to defend yourself against every small social probe, something strange happens. People lose a kind of invisible power they did not even know they had over you, and the social dynamic shifts permanently. Is one of the most ancient psychological weapons in human interaction, and most people have absolutely no defense against it. Here is what happens: you finish saying something, you share an opinion, you make a point, you reveal something personal, and the person in front of you simply stares at you. No response, no nod, no smile, no reaction, just silence. And most people experience this as unbearable. Within seconds, their mind begins racing. Did I say something wrong though, they think I am stupid, I offend them and then the most revealing thing happens, they start talking, they start filling the silence with words, rushing nervous words over explanations, brifakashakak of it, designed to relieve the psychological tension that the silence created. In doing so, they reveal something profound. They reveal that their emotional stability depends on receiving signals from the outside world. They reveal that they cannot survive in the uncertainty of silence, and the person watching this, whether consciously or not, takes note. Now watch what happens when a person with genuine confidence encounters silence. They do not panic, they do not rush to fill the space, they simply remain comfortentry if the silence has no power over their emotional state. And this is extraordinary to witness, because silence is a pressure that most humans cannot withstand. This is why silence is used strategically in some of the highest stakes environments in the world. Professional negotiators use it, experienced therapists use it, powerful leaders use it, and yes, manipulative people use it too, because silence forces people to reveal themselves. Person who speaks first in an uncomfortable silence is usually the person who needs something from the other end. The person who can wait, can breathe in the uncertainty, who can meet silence with stillness, that person holds a kind of quiet, psychological power that is very difficult to challenge. Ability to sit in silence without reaching for reassurance is one of the most underrated skills in human psychology. Silence is not just the absence of sound. Silence is a mirror. It forces you to face yourself. It forces you to confront the question of whether your sense of self requires constant external confirmation. Most people discover through their reaction to silence that they need that confirmation more than they realize. You share an opinion, you say something you genuinely believe in, someone looks at you and says, "I do not think that is true." Watch very carefully what happens in the next 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds reveal something about a person that hours of ordinary conversation never could. Most people immediately change their voice, changes their posture, changes their energy changes. They start hedging, getting qualifications, saying things like, "Well, I could be wrong," or "maybe I am not sure about theater." They go in the opposite direction. They become suddenly aggressive, offensive, tone sharpens, and they work very hard to convince the other person that they are right. Both reactions communicate the same underlying thing. The sense of self is threatened by your disagreement. Confidence requires your agreement to stay intact, and people feel this. They feel it in the voice, they feel it in the body language, they feel it in the sudden shift of energy. Now, observe what happens when a genuinely confident person encounters disagreement. They do not collapse, they do not become aggressive, they do not rush to defend or convince. They consider the disagreement with genuine curiosity. They may ask a question, they may offer a different perspective. Their core energy does not change, their voice does not tighten, their posture does not shift, because their sense of who they are is not threatened by the existence of a different opinion. And this is extraordinary too. Witness-based disagreement is one of the most common and powerful social tests that people run on each author. It is used to discover whether your confidence is genuine or perform, whether your identity is stable or dependent on validation. And the answer is always revealed in those first 3 seconds after the challenge arrives. There is something that experienced observers of human behavior understand. Deeply debates reveal personality more reliably than intelligence. Some people become aggressive the moment resistance appears. Some people become immediately submissive. Very few remain genuinely calm, and the ones who remain calm, those are the ones people remember. Those are the ones people unconsciously trust. Because true confidence is not loud. It does not need to convince it, does not need to defeat it. Simply remain steady, clear, and unmoved. The digital world has created an entirely new landscape of confidence testing, and most people are completely unprepared for it. There is the scenario: you send a message to someone, they read it, you can see that they read it and nothing has passed. Your mind begins doing something that feels almost involuntary. It starts constructing stories. Did I say something wrong here? They losing interested. I come across too eager, too distant, too much, too little, and then you do something that reveals more about your emotional state than any conversation ever could. You check your phone again and again and again, and in that cycle of checking and waiting and wondering, something important is happening. Your emotional equilibrium is deteriorating. Your peace is being governed by someone else's behavior, and the person on the other end, whether they are doing this deliberately or simply living their life, is providing the conditions for a test. Because how you respond to uncertainty reveals your emotional architecture in a way that very little else can. People who lose themselves in the waiting will send follow-up messages searching for reassurance. You craft apologetic notes in case something offended will feel their sense of self slowly erode with every passing hour of silence. These people are showing a deep dependency on external signals for internal stability, and perceptive people notice this. They notice the neediness beneath the surface. They notice the emotional chasing in something and then responds to it in a way that usually makes the situation worse and not better. No, the genuinely confident mindset in this situation is not about pretending you do not create, is not about playing games or deliberately being distant. It is about something much more real and much more difficult. It is about having a life so present and so full that the absence of a response does not create a void. It is about having an identity so grounded that someone else's timeline does not control your emotional state. And when that grounding is real, when it is not performed but genuinely felt, the way you carry yourself changes entirely, and people feel the difference immediately. There is a test that happens slowly, quietly over time, and most people do not even recognize it until significant damage has already been denied. Is the boundary test, and it works like this. Mion asks you for a favor. You say yes even though it inconveniences you, and they ask again and again. You say yes and they start being a little latent. You accommodate and they cancel plans last minute, and you tell them it is fine, and they start speaking to you differently in front of other people, a little dismissively, a little carelessly, and you say nothing because you do not want to cause conflict. And with every yes, with every accommodation, with every silence, something invisible is happening. The other person's unconscious mind is receiving information. It is calculating. It is mapping the territory of what is acceptable. It is learning that there are no walls, no limits, no edges where your self-respect begins and their treatment of you must stop. And what follows is almost always the Samith. Treatment deteriorates not because the person is evil, but because human beings are unconsciously shaped by the behavioral signals they receive, and the signal you have been sending is that there are no consequences for crossing your specifics. Is where kind people get trapped in cycles. They cannot understand. They believe they are being loving and generous and accommodating, and they are, but they are also accidentally communicating something they never intended to communicate. They are communicating that they do not value themselves enough to protect their own peace, and people respond to that communication with less respect, not more. The most powerful thing a person can understand about boundaries is this: a boundary is not aggression. Boundary is not cruelty. A boundary is information. It tells people who you are and what you believe you deserve. The people who test your boundaries are often discovering whether you believe you deserve anything, and a liar answer is never given in words, it is given in behavior, and behavior is the only language the unconscious mind truly understands. Eyes carry information that words cannot contain, and human beings have been reading that information since before civilization existed. This is why eye contact is one of the most revealing and most tested elements of human confidence, and it is what happens in a simple conversation. Person maintains relaxed, steady eye contact. Another looks away frequently at the floor, at the king, and the floor, at the can, the ceiling, at anything except the eyes of the other person, and another locks eyes with an aggressive intensity that feels like a tie. Challenge. Each of these patterns communicates something different, something deep, something that bypasses rational thought entirely and goes straight to instinct. Frequent looking away often signals anxiety fear of being evaluated negative. A kind of social bracing, as if the eyes of another person are dangerous. Aggressive staring often signals an attempt at dominancia, testing of emotional strength through intimidation. But calm, sustained eye contact signals something entirely different. It signals presence, emotional balance. A person who is comfortable being seen and comfort with being seen is one of the most quietly powerful signals a human being can send, because it communicates self-acceptance. It says, I am not afraid of what you will find. When you look at Menno, here is where it becomes psychologically fascinating. People who constantly seek approval often struggle with eye contact in a very particular way, not because they are shy or introverted, but because their brain is running a constant threat evaluation. It is scanning for signs of negative judgment. It is looking for evidence of disapproval, and this constant scanning creates a kind of visual restlessness that other people feel as nervousness or evasiveness. But when you stop needing constant approval, when you stop treating other people's perceptions as threats that must be monitored, your body language shifts automatically and your eyes become calm, not cold, not aggressive. Calm, and that calmness is one of the most compelling things a human being can embody, because it communicates something rare. It communicates that you are safe inside yourself. This is one of the strangest and most disorienting tests you will ever encounter, Bess. It happens precisely when things are going well. 1. You begin to grow and you start becoming more of who you always had the potential to be. Something unexpected happens in the people around you. Some celebrate, but many others react in ways that make no logical sense. They become distant. They make small dismissive comments about your progress. They remind you of your failures from years. Agatha laugh when Lane you share your goals. They subtly discourage your ambitions with language that sounds reasonable on the surface. Things like be realistic or do not get too far ahead of yourself, and most people experiencing this feel confused because they expected support, they expected encouragement, and instead they receive something that feels like quiet opposition. What is actually happening here is one of the deepest psychological phenomena in human social behavior. Growth creates a mirror for other people, and that mirror shows them the gap between who they are and who they wanted to be. And some people cannot tolerate that mirror, so they try to eliminate it, not by growing themselves, but by diminishing Yuthi. Test whether your confidence is real or whether it is fragile enough to be broken by their discomfort. They push the pocket the underminion. They watch because if they can get you to shrink yourself to make them comfortable, they can convince you to dim your light so their darkness is less noticeable. They will feel temporary relief, but if you keep growing anyway, you continue becoming who you are regardless of their reaction. That is when something important happens. They either grow with you or they quietly fade from your world. And Here is the part that most people find hardest to accept. Not everyone is meant to be part of every chapter of your life. Some people only love the version of you that felt smaller than them, and your job is not to return to that version. Your job is to keep going. Imagine this: you are in a group of people, meeting, gathering, a social event, and suddenly someone corrects you. Public liar exposes a mistake. You matter puts you on the spot with a question they know you cannot fully answer. Teases you in front of others in a way that creates that terrible familiar heat in your chest, and every pair of eyes in the room turns toward you, and in that moment, in that single unbearable moment, everything is revealed. Because public embarrassment triggers something ancient and powerful in the human brain, something that goes back thousands of years to when being rejected by the group was not just uncomfortable, it was genuinely dangerous. It meant being cast out, it meant survival was threatened, and so the emotional response to public embarrassment is wired very deep. It feels physical, it feels like pain, and for most people, it is absolutely devastating. The impulse is to disappear, to apologize, profusely, to over-explain, to become smaller, to make the moment end as quickly as possible. But watch what happens when someone who is genuinely confident encounters public embarrassment. They do something extraordinary. They remain. They do not disappear. They do not collapse. They acknowledge the situation with a kind of easy likeness. They might laugh, adjust, correct what needs correcting, and then they move on as if the mistake was just information, not a verdict on their value as a human being. And watching this, witnessing someone recover from embarrassment with grace instead of chemise, one of the most impressive things a human being can observe in another, because what it communicates is the rarest of all psychological qualities. It communicates self-acceptance in the presence of imperfection, and self-acceptance under pressure is essentially unshakable confidence, because it says I can be wrong, I can fail, I can be exposed, and I will still be okay. Asterisk. Nothing reveals confidence more completely than rejection, and rejection comes in many forms: a message ignored, idea dismissed, an invitation declined, a dream laughed at, an application denied, relationship ended, and in every single one of these moments a choice happens, a choice about what the rejection means. Most people make one particular choice: they decide the rejection means something is wrong with them. They internalize it, they carry it, they let it become part of the story they tell themselves about who they are. Over time, rejection after rejection after rejection, that story becomes a cage. It becomes a reason to stop trying, to stop risking, to stop reaching. And the tragedy is that most people living inside that cage believe they are being realistic. They believe they are simply learning from experience, but what they are actually doing is allowing external events to define their internal identity. And emotionally strong people see rejection completely differently. They see it as information, not identity. They experience the disappointment fully. They do not pretend it does not hurt, but they do not allow the hurt to become a conclusion about who they are. They ask, what can I learn from this? And then they continue in this distinction. This seemingly small difference in how rejection is interpreted creates completely different life trajectory. Bows. People who treat rejection as information keep going. They accumulate experience. They refine their approach. They develop resilience that compounds over time, and eventually they reach outcomes that seem impossible to the people who stop it, while the people who stopped wonder quietly why some people seem to be living different lives. Now it is time to go to the root of all of this, because you might be asking a very reasonable question. Why do human beings do any of this? Why the tests? Why the probing? Why the constant unconscious evaluation of each other's emotional strength? The answer lives deep in evolutionary history. Human beings did not evolve as solitary creatures. We evolved in groups, and for hundreds of thousands of years. The survival of those groups depended on something very specific. It depended on the ability to accurately read other people, to sense emotional stability, to detect inner strength, to identify who could be trusted to hold their composure when the pressure arrived. Because pressure always arrives, and in ancient environments, pressure was genuinely life or death storms, predators, conflict, famine, disease, and the human brain developed extraordinary sensitivity to the signals that separate emotionally stable people from emotionally fragile ones. That sensitivity never went away. It simply moved into different environments instead of detecting whether someone can hold their composure in a physical crisis. Modern humans detect whether someone can hold their composure in a social one, and all of those behaviors we have explored. Today, the interruption, the joke, the silence, the disagreement, the delayed response, the boundary testing, the eye contact, the public embarrassment, the rejection, all of them are the modern brain doing exactly what it evolved to do, gathering data on emotional strength. And here is the most important thing to understand about all of this: confidence is not something people can see directly. They cannot see your internal beliefs. They cannot access your private thoughts. They cannot measure your self-worth in any direct way. They can only observe your behavior, and your behavior is the only evidence they have. So when you react to pressure with calmness, when you hold space and silence without collapsing, when you continue after interruption without shrinking, when you hear disagreement without losing yourself, when you encounter rejection without deciding you are worthless, what people observe is not just confident behavior. What they observe is evidence of a person who genuinely knows who they are, and that evidence changes everything. Most people spend their entire lives performing confidence. They study how to sound more confident, how to look more confident, how to walk more confidently, how to use the right words, the right posture, the right tone, and all of that is not entirely without value, but it misses the point entirely, because real confidence, the kind that people actually feel when they are in your presence, the kind that changes how they treat you without you saying a single word about yourself, that confidence is not a performance, it is a state. It is an internal state of emotional independence. It is the quiet, settled knowing that your worth as a human being is not something that gets voted on, is not something that gets decided by who texted back, or who agreed with your idea, or who laughed at your joke, or who approved of your choices, or who was impressed by your achievements. It is not dependent on any of that, and the moment you truly internalize that, not just intellectually, but in the marrow of your experience, something fundamental shifts, because when your identity stops depending on external validation, people lose the ability to emotionally control you. They can interrupt, and you simply continue. They can stay silent, and you remain comfortable. They can disagree, and you stay curious. They can reject, and you stay intact. They can embarrass, and you recover. They can test, and you simply remain yourself. And that unshakable quality of remaining yourself under every kind of pressure is what people mean when they talk about someone having a presence. It is what they mean when they say someone has an energy. It is what they mean when they say they cannot fully explain why they trust this person. They are responding to emotional certainty. They are responding to a human being who has stopped needing the world to confirm their value before they can feel it themselves. And here is the most quietly powerful truth of all: the people who command the most genuine respect, the ones who are followed, trusted, admired, not through manipulation or loudness or performance, but through something real and deep and undeniable. They are not the people who never feel fear. They are the people who stopped letting fear determine their behavior. They felt the pressure. They felt the uncertainty. They felt the discomfort of silence and rejection and embarrassment and disagreement. And they stayed present. They stayed themselves. They stayed calm, and the world responded. Now you know the tests. Now you see the patterns. Now you understand what is happening beneath the surface of ordinary human interaction, and that understanding is not just information, it is a different way of moving through the world. The world will keep testing you every single day in ways obvious and hidden, in ways gentle and brutal, in ways expected and completely surprising. And every single one of those tests is asking the same question: do you believe in yourself? Your answer will never be in your words. It will always be in how you move, how you breathe, how you remain. This is Human Hour. And now you see what others cannot. Stay calm, stay aware, stay human. Two halves.